We are officially 11 days before the Ole Miss Rebels will be playing the Louisville Cardinals. It's time to figure out who the Cardinals have with a very transfer portal heavy roster.
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome into this crossover, Locked On Ole Miss and Locked On the Portal. I am Brian Smith, along with Stephen Willis, former Ole Miss staffer, lifelong Ole Miss fan. We're going to be discussing the SEC against everyone because they need to win some of these early season games, including the Louisville Ole Miss game, to kind of get their mojo back. We'll talk about that later in the show. I want to go over how the cornerback room has been upgraded, to say the very least, at Ole Miss. We're going to talk about Keegan Croucher, the 2027 quarterback recruit, and we're also going to get into, I don't know how else to say this, Stephen, the ridiculousness of NFL players to college, which is the biggest oxymoron ever. But to start the show, we're going to talk about the Louisville Cardinals and their lineup. They got a bunch of players from the portal. I know some of them. Want to give some thoughts, get Stevens as well. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKED ON for $20 off of your first purchase. All right, Stephen. Everybody probably knows about Isaac Brown, and he's a kid that was recruited at, I believe, Homestead or Dade County, one of those schools down there in the Homestead area. He can fly. He's a great player. We could talk about him a little bit, but I went and counted, just for whatever this is worth. Our Lads does their depth charts. They're not always accurate, especially in fall camp. But just by what they had, I counted 17 of the 22 offensive and defensive starters for Louisville as being a transfer at some point. That is a really high number. So first off, shout out to Phil Steele and every other company, Athlon, whatever you want, for trying to figure out, okay, it's like when they do this stuff, they do it in May. Let's predict a starting lineup. Good luck. I don't know if you can really do it right now, and we're at the end of fall camp because everybody closes down as much as they can anymore. It's media access, Ole Miss in particular, has been horrible this offseason. So I just want to go over a few of these guys and talk a little bit about it with people. I'm going to name some of the guys I know, and if Steven wants to jump in at any point, fire away. The quarterback is the most important. Lincoln Kienholz. He's a guy that comes over from Ohio State. He's very athletic. He's got a good arm. He was an elite player coming out of high school in terms of ranking. But as they say, Ohio State, it's kind of loaded, Stephen. It's not exactly easy to get on the field. He wasn't even second team. It's insane. And he's still, like, again, he was a top 100 quarterback recruit. What they have on their depth chart at quarterback is grotesque. So he wasn't obviously going to beat out Sayan because Sayan was younger than him. They were, it's like time to move on. Are you worried about that at all? Have you heard anything? Because, like, I tried to look up Louisville information. Dude, it's crickets. Like trying to find out, and we know Brohm will teach him to throw the ball to a certain degree, but have you heard anything on that? Because that's the only way I see Louisville winning this game is if he can make some post-snap reads, and that's a lot to ask in your game one start.
I go back and forth on this because Jeff Brohm is a Bobby Petrino guy. Yeah. And the reason I say that is if you want to see how a Bobby Petrino system handles an athletic quarterback, just look what Lamar Jackson was able to do at Louisville. They're going to be able to get it done even if you haven't seen it. The kid's from Pierre, South Dakota. That's where he is. So I can't imagine the high school football level was that high, but he was good enough to get a offer to Ohio State. Now, he ran for about 1,400 yards as a high school senior. Ran for 1,400 yards, which means the Ole Miss defense needs to be prepared to take on the read game, the quarterback counter game, stuff like that, because him and Isaac Brown, that kind of does the same thing that Trinidad Chambliss and Kewan Lacey does in the backfield. It's kind of a pick your poison type situation. It's going to be important for Ole Miss to keep Louisville in longer yardage situations. I don't think his strength is throwing the football. Now, that's, like I said, that's a relative thing because he got an offer to Ohio State. But I think he's more athletic than he is a good thrower, and I think he's a true old school definition of a dual threat quarterback, which means he's not a very good drop back passer as well. Kienholz scares me He does, because there's not going to be any film of Jeff Brohm with a quarterback running that type of a system, but through the Bobby Petrino stuff, they're going to be able to do that well.
He's, for whatever this is worth, listed at 6'2", 215 off the depth chart that I saw. I'm not saying he's as big as what Riley Leonard was at Duke or Notre Dame, but I think in certain situations he'll be used similarly. 3rd and short, 4th and short, especially, they're going to go tempo 100% because they're probably not going to stop Trinidad anyway. So to the hell with it is my guess is what Brom's going to say. If we don't score 30, we have no shot anyhow. I would imagine they're going to 100% have stuff they haven't even used in the last 3 years. You're just going to have to adjust on the field. They're going to take it out of the Ole Miss defensive coordinator's hands because they're going to show formations and especially motions and stuff out of formations. It's not on film in the last 3 years. And they've got a quarterback that, as you duly noted, he can move. That's the thing that the Ohio State people always talked about. If he ever just figures it out at all as a passer Ryan Day is obviously a very good play caller. He would have killed it. So I think you're spot on. If they can get him into 3rd and 5 or longer, it's going to be hard because they still might run quarterback power on 3rd and 5, try to catch you in a white box or something.
Yeah. Try to get it to 4th and 1, 4th and 2, and then
go
run
for
it again. Yeah.
I know this is going to sound weird. They may approach it similarly to what Navy does when they play teams that are way above them. Like they play Notre Dame every year. They go for it on about half of their 4th downs. They're not going to beat Notre Dame anyway. You might as well go for it. Well, Louisville's got a lot, no offense to Navy. They've got a lot more talent than Navy does. If you get into 4th and 1 and you're past your own 40, they're going to go for it every time. That's my opinion. I don't know if they'll be consistent at all in the passing game. Again, I can't really find much that I trust in terms of news, but I do know that one of their transfer receivers is Lawayne McCoy. Played at Miami Central, very heavily recruited. Miami and Florida State, signed with Florida State, was pretty decent for a couple of years from the Noles. But then he took the check and went to Louisville. Straight up. He took the check and went to Louisville. That kid scares me a little bit if I'm a DB because he could run by guys. And he is somebody, if he catches the traditional bubble screen, if you do not attack it, fundamentally, he can score. A lot of the other kids on the offense, though, again, Isaac Brown's on a whole nother level. He is by a million miles the guy you got to stop. He averages about 7 yards a carry. Not somebody you want to get in the open field if you're Ole Miss and try to catch him because you're not. He might be the fastest running back in college football. But some of these other guys I'm not really that familiar with. Like I'm looking at their list. Like I really don't know their linemen. And literally all 5 of their offensive linemen are transfers. That doesn't make me warm and fuzzy about Louisville. Like that means you've done a terrible job of recruiting high school linemen. And we both know, Stephen, when you miss on high school linemen, it usually does not end well.
Yeah.
So I know this is probably going to sound like a jerk thing to say, but outside of, I'm sure Brown will get loose at least once. That guy's incredible. But I bet you on 80% of his carries, it's 4 yards or less because I think Ole Miss will out-talent them at the line of scrimmage. I'm like you. I think Kienholz is the bigger thing. Real quick before we go into segment 2, as far as their defense goes, just kind of looking at it, I only know one of the guys personally, and that's A.J. Green. He's a defensive end out of the Atlanta area. He's a 6'6" guy. He's about a condor. He's got the length of like an NFL left tackle. And the other guy, the Clev Lubin kid, is really, really good. So their edges have some talent. Dae'Quan Russell's a kid that's going to start for them, but he couldn't play at Miami. He's from Miami Columbus. He was a really good high school player. TJ Capers, another kid from Miami Columbus. He's a linebacker. He's pretty good. Dae'Quan Clark's another Miami area kid. I think he's a pretty good backer. But after that, I don't know if they have a ton of guys that I'm super excited about. But they've done some decent things, and their defensive coordinator situation has changed. Have you heard anything on what – I mean, you got Trinidad. You're going to run your offense. But have you heard anything that they want to attack from an Ole Miss perspective? What do you think about the Louisville defense?
Basically, with the Louisville defense, I know they're ball hawks. I know that they want to try and turn you over. That's how they got Miami down in the
they got 4 turnovers or 5 turnovers. It was ridiculous. Yeah. They did.
Yeah, I think they're going to attack that, but there's not a lot of information coming out either way. And when we come back from the break, I do want to ask you about Edwin Joseph because something came up. I do have a nugget on that, but we'll talk about that when we come back.
There we go. All right, after the break, we're going to talk a little Edwin Joseph, and then we're going to dive into the ridiculousness of the NFL players going to college, or maybe not, because the SEC has finally kind of stood up. That is next, right here on this crossover. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. There are more live events than ever to go out and see, whether it's Ole Miss, whether it's a concert, comedy show, a festival. The hard part isn't trying to find something that you want to attend. It's actually get the tickets to any of these kinds of events, because there's long wait times, checkout processes can be a little sketchy, and there's some surprising fees. So buying tickets isn't always the best opportunity to have a good time, and that can cause you a lot of grief. So check out what's going on with Game Time, the app that is built to buy tickets and make it simple. Upfront pricing, seat views right there on your phone, exclusive savings that are opportunities for you to get to the events that you want without any hassle. I have bought tickets not once, but twice with Game Time in the last year. Bought basketball tickets. It's pretty simple. Found the game I wanted, clicked on it, just looked at the stadium arena, picked a seat I wanted, saw the seat view, away we go. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. All right, Stephen, what's going on with Mr. Joseph?
He had a media availability last week, I guess Thursday or Friday. He came up there and he was asked, what is he doing in practice? And he mentioned that he'd spent about the last week playing outside at cornerback, which makes me want to ask you, because he started at Florida State as a corner. He's obviously a South Florida guy. He's comfortable doing that. What do you think that means to you?
I think they're trying all options, but he's a guy that'll hit for his size. That's kind of odd. Florida State, when he originally got there, they were an extremely heavy man team, like top 5 in the country. And then they changed coordinators and he moved. I mean, they wanted to run zone. And most guys that are really good man corners, once that's in their head, change is not good. And they had some problems with that last year. One of the guys that it was similar to that didn't play as much last year, Quindarius, he's a kid out of Mississippi, actually. So it can be difficult. If they're going to play him at corner, that makes me wonder how much zone they're really going to run. I thought it would be pretty 50-50, but they may be putting him in situations where maybe like they're going to put him on the boundary side and run what Saban calls MOD, which obviously a certain head coach at Ole Miss kind of knows Saban for obvious reasons, working under him. So he would play man on one side, you play zone on the other. Teams that run that bunch, you can't play straight up man on the field side. You'll get shredded. You have to play some version of zone and or match, as Saban likes to talk. But I bet you that that's what it's going to be. He would be the guy on the boundary if they're going to play that. And he's going to be zeroed in on doing one thing, because he's a hell of an athlete. But in zone, at corner, that didn't work out for him. So you got to be very specific, unless he's just gotten a lot better at it. Maybe Florida State didn't teach him very well, too. After the last couple of years, that could be possible.
I think that whenever he was getting reps out there, it's like, oh, they're going to be a man team this year, at least some version of it.
Well, that's the new thing. Like these teams run 3-by-1. It's high risk to put one guy on a side against a big time receiver in the SEC, like against LSU or Texas or Florida or something. Like if you want to go one-on-one with Dallas Wilson from Florida, good luck. That guy better be really good or it's going to be a touchdown. So maybe they're just trying some different things, and they can also give him help with a safety. There's a different way you can do that. But like they moved him to safety for the reason that he's a thumper and they could do different things with him. So Florida State also never has problems finding corners. Yeah. I mean, they're in Florida. It's not that hard, man. So safety is actually harder for them than corner. Everybody else, it's the other way around. Keep that in mind.
Yeah, and they said he can play all 5 positions.
Athletically, 100%.
Yeah.
100%.
So this may be a situation that he's just getting some reps on all parts of the field so he can communicate what's going on and have an idea. And sometimes he's running out on the outside if you need a matchup that you like. If somebody doesn't do well with physicality, you put him out there and on the boundary
100%.
with him and kind of go.
That is the one thing he will not shy from. I can assure you of that just from seeing his high school film, watching him at Florida State. He'll be a guy that'll want to be physical. The only question I have for him, will he wrap up? Sometimes he's one of those shoulder bumper guys that drives me bananas. A lot of guys, even do that at the NFL level. It drives me nuts. All right, Stephen, it is time for I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but the ridiculousness of, and I hate saying this even out loud, NFL players going to college. That's one of the dumbest things that's been uttered out of my mouth in my entire life, but it's actually true. That's what the attempt is. Guys that left college last year, went to NFL training camps, trying to come back. We're going to cut to the short end of this. Obviously, if you followed college football at all, whether you wanted it to or not, you've seen something on it in the last 24 to 48 hours. Some players going to LSU, Dae'Quan Wright being one of them. There's some others, and it's confusing. But there's been an injunction or whatever you want to call it from a Baton Rouge judge saying if you didn't make it because of the new 5-for-5 rule, it's a lot of Band-Aids put together to stick this bad boy together. However, I'm going to just give the short end of this, and Stephen and I are both agreeing that this is ridiculous in general. So here's part of the quote, because the SEC is basically saying, you can do it if you want, but here's part of the problem. This is just part of the quote that I cut out. Violating the new SEC pro sports rule will result in a coach suspension, 50% of the contests, and a hefty fine. The fine will amount for 50% of that sport's annual operating budget. So just put it in perspective. What is it, Stephen? Like 22 million or something like that is just like the money for NIL and all that. But your operating budget's totally different. That counts coaching and all that's. There's no way you could do it. So I don't know all the answers to this, and I've only started to dive into it. And this is from On3, and credit to them. They've got a pretty good article. Go check it out. It's called SEC Presidents Formally Vote to Codify NFL Player Ban Penalties for Infractions. And it's 15-0 vote, and LSU abstained from going into the vote. Obviously, there's 16 teams in the league. So LSU's been voted.
They voted for it last night on the straw man, and when they did the official one, they abstained.
Right.
I'm telling you that they're playing a dangerous game right now. I'm just going to put it like that. They are playing a dangerous game. Yeah,
I don't see how this ends well for you doing this, because like at the end of the day, man, you're LSU. It's one of the easiest programs in the country to get talent. It's kind of hard to rank them outside of the top 5 for that. And I agreed for once with Lawayne that he said, well, if we don't get him, somebody else probably is. And he's not wrong there. There'll be somebody at G6 or whatever will get him, but you can't have one school setting this up in advance, having it all lined up, and then the judge rule on it. Let's be honest, they handpicked the judge. It's a Baton Rouge judge, and everybody's done that in some capacity. So kind of be careful before you throw stones at a glass house. But at the same time, is anybody surprised that the rest of the league was disappointed in them? I mean, what did LSU expect? You know what I mean? Come on.
I'm more curious about the other part of this story, and that is that it was set up to where there was recruitment of players that were under contract in NFL camps to set up this lawsuit, which means he tampered with an NFL roster. You have to think that those guys who want to be the top dog, whenever they walk around, they're peacocking around talking about how they don't like it whenever they get used. And I think there might be a little bit of a pushback here.
That's something that goes down a whole nother rabbit hole. Mm-hmm. And that's, I hate this term, but it's billable hours right there, buddy. That gets into the Warrior stuff. And I hate it with every fiber of my being. I'm not going to really dive into it much, but I don't expect the NCAA to do anything here because it's the NCAA. They suck. But that's another, if that's true and it can be proven, what does the SEC do? You know what I mean? Like they don't want to say it because the advertisers don't want LSU suspended at all. And the advertisers run college football, and LSU is a big driver. So the SEC is in a really tough spot if that is true. But that's something they're going to have to look at, because sometimes you just got to eat it.
Yeah.
And it would serve as principle. Hey, if you're way out of bounds, even a school like LSU could be in a lot of trouble, because we can't have somebody making us look bad, man. We just can't do that. There has to be a certain guideline that we all go with. Just saying. So
there has to be a professional relationship to this. There has to be.
Yeah, and that behind the scenes stuff can get very, very touchy. But before we go to break, real quick, Keegan Croucher had another nice game. I did see one clip where he threw a touchdown. I believe it was to the kid that's going to Ole Miss, the 28 kid that's from Mississippi.
Adams?
Yeah, I believe it was to Antoine.
Yeah, he had one called back too. He threw a touchdown pass that was called back. They ended up kicking a field goal on that one. Cruz Jenkins had 2 long ones for Brentwood Academy. Like,
he's pretty good quarterback.
Plus, yeah, he's a good little player. I think that Baylor team, I don't see them losing this year.
Probably not. I don't think they're playing IMG or Mater Dei or anything like that. So otherwise, it's probably not going to happen.
DGG is a freak. Yeah, he is he flipped over,
I saw that.
Over heels, landed on his feet and gained 5 more yards.
Yeah, that, and then you got Keegan Croucher to throw play action when they don't want to run the ball. Good luck. So
and Antoine Adams, he looks like he's the dude for that team. So I'm not going to say his nickname because I'm just not going to do that. Well,
that's fine. I'm really curious about what's going to happen next year with Ole Miss's depth chart at quarterback. Could Croucher, in your opinion, end up being the guy? That's the second. I mean, we know who starter is going to be. That's going to be Deuce, barring something very unforeseen. But they've got some other players too. That backup quarterback position next year at Ole Miss, I have a feeling that'll be a dominant topic on your shows because there's more than one option, to say the least, and it's going to be fascinating. But Croucher's even better than what I thought for what little I've seen of him so far this year. So he's a good player.
When I watch him play football, and this sounds silly, but Trevor Lawrence, that's what I see. He's got an absolute cannon, can move around, can run. He's a really good player. Now, the difference is he played high school football in upstate New York and Connecticut. So
now this is different.
He has to ramp up just a little bit, but man, that's a toolsy guy, man.
Absolutely. When we come back, I want to talk a little bit about the Ole Miss cornerbacks and SEC versus everybody. We've talked a little bit about the offense today, and we expect Trinidad to do really good things against Louisville. I think we've covered Trinidad enough that everybody knows that he's that guy. That's, if he has an off day, he is human, but 10 out of the 12 games, I expect him to be at 275 or more in a rushing touchdown. He's that guy. So my question to you, Stephen, here at the end of camp, and I know there's not a lot of news, which cornerback do you think is going to be the most effective in those true one-on-one battles against Lord only knows how many quality wide receivers, Louisville included? I guarantee you a couple of those guys are going to be problematic. It's a Jeff Brohm offense, let's be honest. Who's going to be the corner that's most likely to be the dominant guy for the Rebs?
It's got to be Jay Crawford, right?
That's what I think too, but I heard an Ole Miss guy the other day say a couple of guys, he didn't mention Crawford. And I'm like, okay.
The problem that you have with Ole Miss this year, there's been about a combined 21 minutes of viewing time for the media, and it was basically punt that people got to see. So they just don't know. You everything's projecting, and the best cornerback that Ole Miss had last year was Antonio Kite. Mm-hmm. But Jay Crawford, unbelievable guy. He has a chance to be really, really good. And you have Sharif Denson. You have Jalen Braxton, who is apparently healthy, and he was freshman All-American at Arkansas before he transferred. He's apparently back to that. I think the corner position right now, I mean, you have Jay Crawford. You're going to have Jalen Braxton. You have Edwin Joseph that can fit in a pinch. You have Sharif Denson that can do the slot corner stuff, or maybe the slot corner becomes the Edwin Joseph position because he's right there by the box. So the cornerback position, they're in pretty good shape. And what I'm impressed by, if they're willing to move Edwin Joseph around, they probably feel pretty good about Ladarian Carty and the young guys, Cortez Thomas and Keon Young and those guys, to go with Janelle Aguero. I'm curious to what the back end of the defense looks like because, make no mistake, the secondary for Ole Miss last year cost them the Miami game. It did.
100%.
A missed tackle, a bust coverage, them having to only rush 3 to protect a secondary is the reason they lost that game. They couldn't do their normal stuff. So that secondary has to be self-sufficient this year. If it is, that front can go to work, and they're going to be really good, but they have to have the ability to do it by the secondary being good.
I agree. By the way, I expect Eccles and all those guys, Cam Franklin, just having another year of experience, it has to help. I mean, there were times last year where some of those guys, let's be blunt, they were on the field way too much. They didn't have the depth they wanted. They've added a little more. They're a year older. They're going to be wiser about how they take care of their bodies and all those little things. That doesn't hurt either, because even if it's just a quarter of a second, doesn't sound like much. If you give quarterbacks on average a quarter of a second less, that's probably a couple more picks, a couple more pass deflections, a couple more dumb passes. They should have just eaten it, and it goes up for grabs and the ball goes the other way. So all of that in combination with Crawford, who I've seen play live at Auburn, if he's as good as what you and I think he is, Ole Miss is going to be a much more annoying defense. They were okay against the run, but against the pass last year, they were just mediocre. They were middle road. Yeah. And when they went against a real quarterback, second half of games, their defensive line was wore out. They picked them apart.
Yeah.
I don't think it'll be quite to that level, and you still have to deal with Trinidad, who is now in year 2 in a system, and he was already as dynamic as any player in college football. That's not a very friendly combination for opposing teams to deal with. And I also think because they know Trinidad is going to score, you got to be realistic if you're an offensive play caller and head coach. If you're a ground and pound team and you're going against Ole Miss, it's one thing if you got Miami's talent. Okay. How many teams have Miami's talent? 5 maybe in college football. Everybody else is going to have to adjust their play calling, because you're not going to just run for enough and get 30 points against Ole Miss. It's not going to happen. If you ain't got a quarterback that can spin it and make some passes, middle of the field, hit some deep shots, you're done. So you're going to see teams take some chances. The Ole Miss secondary is going to have more opportunities to pick ball passes this year. They should be top 5 in the league in picks. If they're not, that means they dropped a whole bunch of footballs. That's on them. That's one of my big pet peeves, by the way. You're a Division I player. When it comes right to you, do not drop the football. Drives me bananas. You're getting paid a lot of money. Catch the darn thing. It's going to happen. Last thing that I want to talk about, I know the early season slate, not just SEC, but across college football, is terrible. The Ole Miss Louisville game is one of the very few good games. Very few. But week 2, it's week 2, Texas hosts Ohio State. I'm just curious, as a lifelong SEC guy, how much do you think that game matters? Because in the last 25 years, the most consistent program in the country, it's not question. It's Ohio State. If they don't beat them, do you think that kind of tinkers with the SEC a little bit? If Ohio State somehow wins, and again, it's at Texas, in any of those kind of, I really don't think Louisville is going to beat Ole Miss, but that one you can throw in there too. Do you think they need a little mojo, something to go their way? And again, there aren't many of these kind of games early, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think you're going to see the SEC split them. Like, for instance, I'm not sure about the Texas-Ohio State game, but you can win that one. But I think the Oklahoma-Michigan game, which has happened the same weekend, that could go either way as well.
Very much.
Ole Miss is one of 3 teams in the first weekend that's scheduled by SEC teams that you can lose the game. LSU playing Clemson's one, and also Baylor playing Auburn is one. Those games are the ones the SEC absolutely has to win. Ole Miss, Louisville, LSU, Clemson, Baylor, Auburn. The SEC team needs to win that. I think you got a little leeway with Ohio State. I think
it's Ohio State.
And I think Oklahoma needs to go up to the big house and handle Michigan. I think 4-1 might be the minimum of that weekend for a good weekend, or a good first 2 weekends.
Steven, I appreciate it, my friend. Please tell everybody where they can find your work.
You can check us out on YouTube at Locked On Ole Miss, or wherever you get your podcasts. We're also at the OleMissHub.com. All of my Locked On stuff is there, including the Everydayer Club and all of that. Stop on by, join our Discord, have a good time, and we'll be happy to have you.
Appreciate it. You can find Locked on the Portal all the same places you find Locked on Ole Miss, Spotify, Apple, Podbean, of course, on YouTube. There's been a crossover, Locked on Ole Miss and Locked on the Portal.